Hi, I'm Moira Carmenate and I am the owner of White Doves Group. Good afternoon. Well, it's afternoon here in Spain where I am today. But I'm the owner of White Doves Group and we have the Expat Centre, White Doves Funeral Planning and Legacy Estates. And in effect is a rounded business that helps and supports predominantly expats, not necessarily British expats, but expats from different countries and helping them navigate all the issues of life in Spain. Well, today I've got with me Mark Nolan from N332. It's a great association here on the Costa Blanca South. And Mark's background is in marketing, and also the N332 helps on everything to do with traffic and education. But today we're talking about something completely different. We're talking about scams. It's very close to my heart because I can get very wound up. So I'm going to apologize in advance if that's the case, because we're seeing things over here. It's like living in a box of frogs, where people are vulnerable because we have a lot of retired people over here. And, quite often they can be vulnerable because they're on their own or they're becoming frail. And that leaves them wide open to people without scruples. And there's been a number of things, ironically, in the past couple of days that have kind of come up where people have lost a lot of money to scammers locally. It's not new. It's going on all the time. And really, the reason it's important to me to do the podcast is to try and help you, the listener, help you basically be aware of where the red flags are and things to watch out for, and protect yourself. It is so, so important. But as I say, I've got Mark with me today and we're just going to have a little chat. I'd like to say you could join in, but obviously you can listen and hopefully you get something from it. Mark, hi, how are you doing?
I was intentionally staying quiet just to see how long you could go on for before you start to realise that I'm staying quiet. But yeah, to be honest, this subject is probably, in my opinion, something that we could talk probably for days and days and days non-stop. But we're not going to do that. We'll try and do a little bit now, I think. But I think there's so much that we can come back to. And just to put my producer hat on for a second, because you say that obviously you'd like people to get involved. Well, they can get involved, of course. Okay. I will tell you towards the end how you can get in touch. But there is an email address which we have, which is podcasts@madblackcat.com. And if you send an email to there for Moira or for myself, then it will come through to us anyway. So by all means, please get in touch. And you can also call into the Expat Centre or the White Dove Centre in Benihoffer or in Matheron, is it?
Matheron and Moira.
And Moira. And just leave a little note with them and that will get through to Moira as well. But that's the bit that I would normally say at the end. So, fraud then.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we run a lot of talks on fraud because fraud takes many, many shapes. But quite often, unfortunately, where fraud occurs, in one of the biggest percentages, is actually from people that you know, people that might be close to you. Mm-hmm. Here we've seen recently, in the past couple of days, people who've taken advantage of others. And, carers, for example, it's a hot potato. Mm-hmm. Carers can do an amazing job. And it's essential, especially here in Spain, because you don't have the same infrastructure that, say, for example, the UK have in terms of helping and supporting people when they're frail or when they come out of hospital. So the private care sector here is a critical part. However, a lot of it is not run properly. And that's the reality. There are a couple of companies there who are legit, who do a great job and who do properly vet and train their carers. Mm-hmm. And that vetting process to make sure they're legal, they're legit, they haven't got any criminal record, and that they are who they say they are, and that they are, as I say, properly trained. That is so, so important. Mm-hmm. But within all of it, you've got people sneaking in, shall we say, schmoozing, if that's the right word, with people. And also people maybe thinking, well, I might save money if I have this person who I know a little bit of, and they're going to charge me less. But in the end, you're potentially going to pay more. What do you think? Have you come across anything, Mark, yourself?
Well, I mean, I was just about to ask a question which I genuinely don't know, but it just came to mind. Because obviously, I mean, carers, the people who are carers and the people who work at carers are absolutely phenomenal people in general terms. And I, for one, could never do a job like that. But it also does potentially invite people who are not quite so caring into the world of vulnerable people. Now, in the UK, for example, is I think it's called the Care Commissioner or something like that.
CCS, isn't it?
Something, yeah. So they audit the care companies, and in turn, the care companies audit the carers. So within the sort of private sector that we're talking about in Spain, does such a thing exist, or is it bypassed, or is it ignored, or
well, the CCS is really a UK thing, but there are companies here who do have best practice procedures in, and who officially and formally train in alignment. If we're in Valencian community, so they do train in accordance with, if you like, the Generalitat Valenciana.
Okay.
So there are companies there, but as many companies that are there that are legit, there are as many that are not.
Okay.
And I think the biggest thing is, if you need a carer, or you think that your family or your mom or your dad may need a carer, is to really do your homework to establish that they are a legit company, that they exist as a business officially, and that they do train and vet their people.
Okay.
Because otherwise, who are you letting into the home of your loved one?
And presumably, if I chose now, I mean, I just said I can never be a carer, but let's say hypothetically, I just said, you know what, I think I've managed to be in a carer for a bit. There's nothing really to stop me going to one of the local newspapers or radio stations and doing an advert and saying, oh, I'm a carer, and I'll charge whatever to provide a service, and I'll look after people who need looking after. There's nothing realistically to stop me doing that.
That's absolutely right, and that's the problem though, Mark. People do just bob up or know somebody and they're working, not necessarily always on black, i.e. cash in hand, but a lot of it is cash in hand. And so therefore the person who's using the care provision are probably thinking, oh, well, that's a lot cheaper, and so therefore cutting the corners, but not necessarily getting qualified care. And and it's, you don't know what you're going to need as you get older, basically, because clearly you've got different levels of care, from nursing, being able to be qualified sufficiently to do that. I mean, it's frightening to think that you've got people administering drugs and intravenous things that might not be qualified.
So, I mean, if we step this up a gear then, and let's say I don't want to be a carer, but let's say I've got an idea and think, I wonder if there's any people who do want to be carers out there, and I'm going to set a business up called Mark's Caring Company, for example, and I put the first advert in the paper this week saying, do you want to be a carer? And then I recruit people to be carers, and I obviously cream some money off them or just pay them a little bit or whatever. I've got no qualifications. I've got no accreditation. There's nobody checking up on me. I don't necessarily check up on the people I'm employing because it's not always that easy to do in Spain. But I could masquerade tomorrow as a legitimate care company and employ people who have told me that they're carers, and I've not checked them. And I could just sit back and let the money roll in and just go, oh, well, it's not my problem because they said they were carers. And I could theoretically do that. You
most certainly could. When I opened the Expat Centre, years ago, my background is in financial services, but I also, when the financial services market was contracting a bit, I had my own outsourcing business. So I had a really big sort of recruitment business in the UK, but not just high street recruitment, but we put a lot of the big processes in for General Motors, Unilever, lots of big businesses like the Welsh Government. But all the infrastructure was in place. So the HR infrastructure and human resources infrastructure, basically, from everything from selection all the way through. So when I came over here, I could see there was a need for legitimate care. Now, whilst I am not a nurse, and God help anybody that I was nursing, it's not something that I could do, and I really think that they do an amazing job, Like you, it's not something that I could do. But obviously in running a business and making sure all the right pieces are in place to check the people. So I started to interview because I thought, well, there's an opportunity, but there's an opening here for a legitimate business. And having put infrastructure in for big businesses, I knew how to put all of that. Well, my goodness, I started interviewing, and I can't tell you how many applications I had. A lot, hundreds. I mean, we're talking hundreds of applications. And when I started interviewing, oh my Lord, I thought there is no way I could touch this with a barge pole. Firstly, then I realized, I would need to have somebody in who was a care manager who really knew the regulation in terms of the medicinal side, if you like. But more to the point is that people I were interviewing, most of them were illegal. They're not necessarily even resident here. And quite frankly, there was no way that they had the qualifications to do the job. And then there was one or two out of hundreds that I thought maybe you would take back for a second interview. I thought, my Lord, you could not offer a service based on that. You just couldn't. You wouldn't have enough resource to do it. And then I always remember one particular person who I did interview that had everything. But something in me said, I wouldn't put that person with a dog. Really, because there was just something, the old witch in me kind of went, there's something not right here. Now, ironically, through the funeral business, years later, I came across this person. And doing a funeral, somebody said to me, oh, I can tell you about this person, but I'll tell you later. And I said, no, tell me now, because I need to if it's what I think, I need to make sure this family are aware. So this person had umpteen denuncias. So a denuncia is a criminal charge, really, against them. Or a criminal, would it be a criminal charge that they call it here? But it's, somebody's basically put a report into the police, they've lodged it, and it will eventually go to court.
Yeah, so a legal complaint has been filed for criminal practices.
For criminal.
A denuncia is not active for something which is administrative or just a financial transaction. It's related to a criminal
activity.
Offense. Yeah, so again, that is a very clear distinction that it is arguably on the path to criminality.
Right. So just in clarifying that, this person had umpteen denuncias. And this was the person that I'd interviewed that I thought, my goodness, there's something. They had every piece of paper, but how were they false, those papers? Who knows? But at the end of the day, something in me said, there's something not right about this. So this person has repeatedly, I use the word rinsed because it's the only word I can think is, families, predominantly men, out of significant amounts of money. Never under 20,000. Some of the activities are disgraceful. And even yet yesterday, it's bobbed up about this person again. How are these people out there managing to keep going, and how hard-faced are they when they've got denuncias against them to keep going as if they were holier than thou? It's frightening.
I think one of the big problems in general terms in the sense of large cases involving potential criminality is there are often cases of the courts being so slow because the courts are so bogged down with work that it takes many, many years for the courts to actually get round to dealing with them. And during that time, I think what tends to happen is, although there might be 10 denuncias have gone in and the courts are going, okay, well, we'll deal with those whilst they can, the person who's been reported has this kind of impression or this feeling that, well, it's been reported and nothing bad's happened now, so I can carry
on as normal.
And they will carry on.
Yeah.
And even though the reports and the denunciations may continue to build, the courts are still not in a position to deal with the case, and therefore they still continue because they effectively get away with it. And it's only when it becomes a because again, a lot of these people are quite clever. You just mentioned more than 20 grand, for example. Now, 20,000 euro is a lot of money. But when you look at the sort of financial criminal cases that the Spanish courts are dealing with, it's a
nothing.
pittance.
Yeah.
So unless it is a significant amount, the courts cannot prioritise it. So it is almost like they're able to get away with it.
It makes sense, actually, Mark, because when you think about there are so many of these cases, basically, and yet, although there was one yesterday, 86,000, and that's happened over a number of years. And basically what's happened is that somebody is either infirm in some sort of way, and these people have got their bank card and the bank details and making transfers and withdrawing cash until eventually there's nothing there. And whilst, as you say, from a criminal perspective, there are maybe in the court's eyes bigger fish to fry, at the end of the day, a lot of times this is everything to these people. These people have been rinsed out of absolutely everything, and it's absolutely disgusting. But I mean, yesterday I was at the tanatorio collecting ashes for somebody, and there was a couple of people there struggling because they didn't understand what it was that they were signing. They had a funeral plan with somebody, and they just don't guide them through what it is. So I was helping them to understand, what the death certificate looks like, how to use it, and just explain basically the paperwork that was there, because nobody was going to tell them. And the reality was the tanatorio wasn't their fault because they don't speak English. So they were absolutely gobsmacked that I spoke English, and they were grateful that I was able to help. But what actually transpired is that the person who'd taken this funeral plan or signed for this funeral plan on behalf of this person who'd passed away had also managed to rinse them out of 20,000. I mean, yesterday, I don't know what was going on, because it just seemed to be coming out left, right and centre. Did they know, Mark, that we were going to do a podcast on scams? Was this it? And there was another one and another one. But, the reality is, I've kind of wondered over the years. And in this situation yesterday, with this gentleman and this lady, they had to go back to England because they were English. They had to go back to England. They would like to have gone to the police. But the reality was that they've only found this out and they had no time.
Yeah.
So yet again, another one goes free. And I think this is the thing. And I think if you think about your family member, take, for example, an elderly mum or an elderly dad, and one of the partners is gone, and the family established that they're being scammed out of something, maybe they then decide that they should just take them back home to the UK or whichever country that they live in. And therefore, again, nothing is ever followed through.
Yeah.
And, how many times does that actually happen? We'll never know. We'll never know.
I just want to mention a two-word phrase, which we'll go into more detail in a second, and you'll see why when I mention it. But before we get that far, again, you say about the people going back to the UK or whatever, and that allows someone to get away with it. But again, one of the things that we see in very general terms is a reluctance to report situations, and fraud is no different. And sometimes people who are victims of fraud feel so stupid once they've realised what's happened, that they're embarrassed to report it. And again, just to be absolutely clear, that is not the case. These fraudsters are so clever, there is nothing to be embarrassed about if you have become a victim of fraud. It's not your fault. You are a victim. But it is crucial that if you feel that you're a victim of fraud or have actually been a victim of fraud, that it gets reported, because it's only when the reports are made that action can possibly be taken. Even though it might not seemingly take place, we just mentioned courts can take a long time to investigate. Okay, but they've got to have the cases in the first place. So it is still vital to report fraud cases that you are aware of.
I think it is important, really. I mean, one of the ones yesterday that came out the night before last, the 86,000 one. I mean, those particular people who've been charged with that have got there's other things. This is not an isolation. There are many things. They have a services agency and have basically conned people on numerous occasions. In fact, we had somebody in earlier today, because it's a little bit of hot news, if you like, saying, oh, well, this person is going to the police, I believe, over this, where the same people have allegedly taken a house over 300,000 in value in lieu of services. I mean, really, what services are you going to give that is going to, value, if you like, or be the equivalent value of over 300,000 house? People are so vulnerable and naive. So there's lots of areas, carers, we spoke about carers, because carers and family members can fall into that same sort of category. But it doesn't take away from there are some great carers out there. And as we both said earlier, neither of us would be able to do a job like that. I wouldn't be able to do it in a month of Sundays. I think, they do a sterling job, and thank God that we have, and we work with a lot of good qualified carers. And if anybody, wanted to come and ask us who we would recommend, we would say not for any kickback, but because of genuine protection and making sure that you're choosing the right people with the right qualification. But scams don't stop just there, do they? I mean, you just said, Mark, people, it's not been feeling foolish because of it, because it is a business, and it's an international, it's a global business. One of the things that we all know of is also where people do get embarrassed is on the dating, the scams, the romance scams. And, you're saying about embarrassment. There was somebody, again, fairly local to here, that we know of, who had been conned. His worldly goods basically were about 30,000, and he lost everything. But he was so embarrassed, he committed suicide. Yeah. And my God, it's so tragic. It is absolutely tragic. Romance scams are constant.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a very famous one only in the last few weeks in the news. There's an American comedian, quite a young guy, called Matt Rife, he's called. And he's very popular. He does sort of stadium tours. So he is a young guy, and he's quite a good-looking guy. And there was a woman who basically got involved with him online and was messaging him online, and he wanted her to send him money. Now, of course, it wasn't him. But this person, the woman who was the victim, was absolutely convinced that it was. And she sent money. And there was no plausible way to look at it from a distance and go, well, yeah, okay, I can see how that happened. You wouldn't do that. But when you're in the thick of that, and when you're that person that's involved with this person, it becomes so convincing that you're not sat isolated and at a distance and detached from it. You are involved, and so it becomes so easy.
It's the emotional it's the emotional pool, isn't it? We had somebody here working with us last year, actually, and the son, I got the message from the son basically saying, look, I'm calling from my friend's phone because my phone's been stolen. Dad, can you send me? I'm really stuck. And he responded right away, panicking, worried about his son. Of course, it was false. And afterwards he said, how could I have been so stupid? But of course, there's this emotional tie right away, isn't there? Yeah. Your son, your daughter, whoever is stuck somewhere, the phone's been stolen. How common is that? So it's all very plausible or very feasible. But, there's an advert on the UK television at the moment. I think it might be a NatWest advert. And, the actor has got a message from the daughter saying, Dad, send me this and whatever. And he's saying, no, this is a scam and whatever. And the guy behind is like, in the know, if you like, saying, well, actually it was legit, you know. But how do you decipher? And it is very, very hard. So what are the red flags? You know, because there are red flags, but sometimes those red flags are only obvious afterwards.
Absolutely. I mean, just whilst you're talking about that, before I going to go to the two words I was going to say, because this is where we're leading to. Only this week, the national police in Spain have been raising awareness about another scam to do with mobile phones. And I think as we sort of go through this, there's so much we can talk about, phishing and smishing and all,
there's so
and so on
much.
and so forth.
Yeah.
But this latest one is very similar to this, I've lost my phone, Dad, can you send me money? And they're calling it the shock call. And what is basically happening is a person is phoning up a parent, often, or they're phoning a victim who they believe is a parent. And it's been happening in Spain, and it's a person with a Spanish accent, because they are Spanish, these people committing these fraud. And they're very pushy in the conversation, but it's called a shock call because they say something like, this is the police, your daughter's just been involved in a fatal car crash, she's just hit a child, the child's been killed, we've got her locked up in prison, and you need to pay X amount of money bail to release them. And you know, literally the national police have only this week started to make people aware of that.
Wow. I wasn't aware of that, I have to say, but you can see how you, first of all, would be in panic.
Absolutely. I mean, if somebody who, you know, in this case, if you're a foreigner in Spain and somebody with what you believe sounds like a Spanish accent speaks to you and identifies themselves as being the police and then tells you this story, the very start of the story is believable, to put you within the context of what they're saying, and then they throw in the shock factor of this fatal crash and the person that you love, daughter, son, whatever it might be, the shock just builds and you don't have time to respond.
Well, you're not thinking because your brain is already sparked off, you know, in this kind of, you know, fight or flight. And that's what's happening, isn't it? So right away, oh my God, what's happened? What do I do? And you're responding right away. Have the police, as a matter of interest, Mark, said anything as to how to come round that, how to deal with it?
What they have said, there's two things that they've said regarding the shock call. First and foremost, the police would never do that.
Yes.
So that is absolutely the crucial thing.
It's a bit like the bank, isn't it? The bank is never going to phone you and ask for your PIN code or ask for your ID. They're never going to do it.
First and foremost, if it happens, it is not the police. So ignore it. Don't worry about it. But also, some of the victims who have gone along with it, I mean, one story, for example, was a lady who was told her daughter had been involved in one of these, and she was talking to the police officer, the fake police officer, saying, oh, I haven't got any money, I can't get that sort of money, and so on and so forth. And the conversation went on. I've got jewellery, and she managed to cobble together a bit of cash, and they made an agreement basically for her to go and drop this money and jewellery, whatever she had, in a place for it to be collected. Now, again, if you look back at that, everybody now would probably go, well, that's ludicrous. The police would never do that. And of course it is ludicrous. But once you're involved and invested in that belief that there's such a dramatic situation happening, you don't respond that way.
Well, you're not going to think logically, are you? Because you're not in a logical situation.
No. So the advice is twofold. First and foremost, the police would never do that. But secondly, just don't buy into it. Don't bite it. Take your time. Take some details if you have to. Don't panic. Just record anything that you might want to record, but do not act. Get as much detail as you can and then make contact with the police to report it. But crucially, do not act.
Well, one of the things we always say, because we do a lot of, as I said earlier, we do a lot of talks on fraud because it's so rife, it's frightening. But one of the things we always say is to try and jump out of the situation. And as you say, the problem is your brain's suddenly going in overdrive in panic mode. But to try for a moment to jump out and look and think, well, they're calling from the bank, allegedly. They're calling from the police, allegedly. So come off of the number that they're calling you on, go on to call from a different number and call what you know to be the bank number, legitimate.
Absolutely. And never the number that they give you, but the one that you've already got.
The one that you find on the, as the bank's head or whatever number you have for customer service legitimate. on a bank that, say it was Sabadell, for example, you go into Banco Sabadell and you look at what is the customer service phone number, and I know they are in different languages. So, you can come out and do it that way.
Yeah.
But it's been able to try to put that brake on something when emotionally you've certainly been tortured. And that's the same with the police, isn't it? Because to come out of that call and say, okay, what's the detail? Who are you? Not the number that they're calling from, because obviously that the whole thing is a scam in the first place.
Yeah.
But to call a police number, and is there a reference number for this particular situation? Because there is always a reference number for whatever situation. Somebody's dropped dead in a bar. We deal with it all the time. There is a reference number that case number basically that the police are going to have. So to try to legitimately think and logically to get a case number and then come off, call from a different phone and phone a normal police station with a case number.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's all, it is all well and good, isn't it? And you can see how people do get caught. Because in that emotional whirlwind, your head's gone off.
One of the things that we you and I, Moira, have spoken about a couple of times, and in fact, I dropped a book off today about the psychology of driving.
Yes.
Into White Doves, but which is all about driving as it happens. But one of the things about psychology and the human brain, and neurologically speaking as well, is more often than not the human brain runs on autopilot, and it learns certain processes and ways of dealing things. And that's all very well. But the problem is, because the reason the human brain works on autopilot is because it can only cope with a certain number of active things at any one time. So it has to learn how to do things so that the active brain is able to do whatever you need to do at the time. So the problem comes when things like this shock call occurs, or the text message, is it completely overpowers the activity in the brain, and the brain instantly flips into panic mode to deal with that situation. And it uses all of its resources to deal with what it's believing that situation is. So even though it's fake, it's still panicking, and everything else, like the logical sense behind it, is completely forgotten, because the brain hasn't got the resources to deal in logic. It's only got the resources to deal with what's happening there and then.
Well, it's the emotion, isn't it? The emotion has gone wild.
I mean, there's something which we speak about, because we obviously we know about me and N332. There's something which we talk about in traffic, where if, for example, somebody cuts you up with a car or pulls out in the car, the instinct is to sound the horn at them. Now, first and foremost, that's illegal, because that's not what the horn is for. The horn is a warning before something. But crucially, that is the most dangerous thing you can do. Because if the driver who's pulled in front of you is, for whatever reason, not realised, or has made a mistake, or has done something wrong, the sound of that horn distracts their entire brain activity to the sound of that horn. So suddenly, it's more likely they're going to stop, panic, and do something even worse than if you just go under your breath, say what you want to say, and let them continue. Because the brain flicks into this panic mode. So this is exactly the same thing that these criminals exploit. They perhaps don't know the psychology behind it, or the neuroscience behind it.
Well, I don't know about not knowing, because I think actually it's much bigger than that, Mark. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a documentary on, I think it was Channel 4 in the UK TV, or the BBC. But it's called, it's about Myanmar, the place near Thailand. And it was a whole village, a whole town really, of high-rise buildings, looking like the likes of Google headquarters or something, very sophisticated high-rise buildings, call centres, and basically mafia run, and it's cyber slavery. And basically people who were backpackers, just, there could have been anybody from any country passing, looking to earn a bit of money, or people who'd come from sort of poorer regions of maybe, Vietnam or any of the surrounding Asian countries, have come into there for a job, and ended up in what they call cyber slavery. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating documentary. Very sad, because basically what's happening there is each one of those individuals is trained in a different a different area. So you, Mark, might be trained to do pension scams. Yeah. I might be trained to do romance scams. But everybody's trained and targeted to get the numbers. And actually, if they didn't get the numbers, they were beaten to bits. It is staggering. But as much as that is, and that is sad, but when you look at the thing behind it, that is a business. That is a big machine. It's international. They're, looking at how do you get phone numbers, how do you get numbers. Those numbers are sold to businesses like this. So this is not just a little scam. These are huge. These are international, and they have no qualms. There's no emotion in these people. This is a business where they are targeted to get X. Go and get it, or we'll beat the hell out of you, basically. So it is absolutely horrific. And so coming back into the shame and the embarrassment that people can feel when they have been scammed, and you feel, stupid. How could I have fallen for that? But it's not a little scam of somebody who's just a bit of a trickster. Yep. This is big. This is big business. These people are trained, and there is no off button. They will keep going until you give in, until you yield, and they will touch all the buttons, the emotional hot buttons, to make you fall for the scam, basically. But it's cyber slavery, Myanmar, and as I say, I can't remember, it's Channel 4. It was a while ago I watched it, but it's staggering. But it just shows the scale of how these scams operate.
Certainly a lot of the online fraudsters are in sort of what we would consider remote locations, remote as in distance, not necessarily remote as in not surrounded by anything. But we see it happening a lot, or has happened a lot recently with social media. Oof. And there's been things which many people have fallen victim of without realizing. There was a very popular one in different forms on Facebook not too long ago. It has quietened down a little bit now, but these things have a knack of coming back. Yep. You got things like, what's your cartoon character name? Just put your mother's maiden name and your pet's name. Yeah. And so you go like, Joanne Fluffy or something. And everyone laughs and is jolly. But the reality is you've just given away two answers which were common questions
for your passwords.
Security.
Yeah.
But because they're masquerade on Facebook, and because people share them and it's humorous, people fall for them left, right and centre. We have spoken almost about two different types, there's many types of fraud, but we've spoken about two different types of fraud. One being those like the shot call, where there's not a lot you can do about in advance. And then we've spoken, or we're standing speaking about things like some of the carers and some of the companies and so on and so forth. So in that sense, the preemptive ones, the two words I want to mention, which will be very common for a lot of people, but often used in a different way, are due diligence.
Yes.
So let's talk about due diligence, because it sounds a complicated phrase, and it is, and it crops up in many business circles and so on and so forth. But it's something which we can all do right now to offer that little bit more of protection. So if I say, based on what you were talking about, Moira, the words due diligence, what would that mean to you?
Well, really, check it out. Check it out. And I can think of a couple, but I can think of one in particular at the moment where the company, we always say this, again, coming back on the fraud talks, it's about where are the red flags? Yeah. Where are the things that, it's not too sure, don't be hoodwinked into something. And so due diligence is doing your check, doing your homework, but not falling. And especially something like, from a financial perspective, so companies, on the internet now, and I think you mentioned social media, Mark, but one of the things in social media is people can be whatever they want to be. AI, the sort of images that can be generated and don't exist, and it's a great tool. We love it, but actually sometimes you think, oh my goodness, how dangerous can this be? And people put themselves out there on social media and paint this picture that they have, say, for example, a company, and it might never really exist. Or is it a front?
Yeah.
Is it a front? Always do your homework. I can think of a particular company just now who came out in a sector close to what we do, shall we say. Now, the person who calls himself the founder cannot be found as the founder anywhere on the internet. Now, I got to say, in this day and age, from a business perspective, many who are in business will know of a platform called LinkedIn. And LinkedIn's been around, oh my gosh, I don't know for how long, but it's a long number of years.
Yeah.
And from a business perspective, it wouldn't be unusual to be on LinkedIn. But when you can't find anybody anywhere in this day and age on a digital platform, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
That is a red flag. And this guy, so then you think, well, is that really the person's name? You're putting yourself out there as the founder. You said this was the company you ran before, but yet you can't find this company, and you're taking people's money.
Yeah.
And now they're bobbing up as wealth advisors in a regulated industry. That is so blooming dangerous. And it's frightening because you know damn fine that some people will fall for this because you get this kind of glossy you might get a glossy folder and a nice bit of marketing material and this social media presence. But behind it, there's nothing. So due diligence is so important in checking out, do these people exist? Who's the founder of the business? Do they have a background in that business? Or did they happen to work for a pharmacy or a supermarket or something before, and suddenly they're in this financial related arena? Where's the background? There are scammers out there. And when you look, when you're in the logical frame of mind, you're not being cornered into something where your emotions have just been attacked, like, as you say, the shot calls. You have time. If you have time to think and stop and look, do it. Because, this day and age, you can find most people. And if you can't find them, there's something wrong.
But as you say, most of us have a digital footprint.
Yep.
And that is something which is both scary but also beneficial. But if somebody's not particularly computer savvy, or you could maybe just try Google, just searching of things. Yeah. But also, let's just come back to reality. Let's forget the digital footprint. Let's forget about the internet. Let's forget about technology and just ask your neighbours, ask your friends, ask for recommendations, ask if anybody's heard of them. So the phrase due diligence, yes, there's a lot we can do the UK, online, but there's also things that we can do offline. And if you're looking, as an example, you do wills, Moira. Yeah. If someone were to come to me and say, I'm thinking of getting a will, then it is highly likely I would say, have you tried Moira? Yeah. Not in a commercial sense, but because of the trust element. Yeah. And that's really the key. It's something which is now being called a new currency, in a way, the currency of trust. Yeah. Because so many businesses are masquerading as something else.
Absolutely.
And trust is important. And we're in a world of online reviews where businesses can be reviewed. And in fact...
but not all reviews are genuine.
Absolutely, and that's the problem we have as well.
That is a massive thing. For example, we had a situation where we let somebody go, within 2 hours, there's a bad review. Surprise, surprise. And this person's the shining star in it. Yeah. And but what can you do about it? So sometimes the review's both ways. So it comes back into the due diligence, isn't it, about asking around? Because there are people, say Trustpilot, for example, is one. But, companies they pay for Trustpilot. Yeah. It's paid for. So it's not necessarily as independent as you might think it is.
Absolutely. And I think that is part of the problem. And there are, although it's technically not allowed, there are companies who reward people for giving positive reviews.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, just ask around is
another thing just on that same, sort of wavelength, Mark, because I forgot about it actually. But, looking at Facebook, certain generation are quite active maybe on Facebook. So we looked at a particular company just because I was curious as to what they were up to next, because it was just a little bit irritating. So I won't go into details of what would be wrong. However, we looked and suddenly they had, it's a while ago, I think, say it was 2,000 followers, right, from nothing. Yeah, so suddenly they'll get 2,000 followers. Andy, who does my web stuff, and he said, did you look at who the followers were? They basically had cloned all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, they came from a particular sector, these followers. Now, I'm not going to say what it was because I'm going to drown myself here. But put it this way, the followers weren't legit. So again, you can buy followers. Absolutely. Apparently on Facebook. Yeah. Apparently you can buy all these blooming followers. So somebody might have 2,000 followers. But if you look at who those followers are, where are they? Oh, they might be in San Diego, or they might be in, Acapulco, or whatever. But actually, so are they? How would they be your follower when you operate in the Costa Blanca South? For example. For example. So some stuff is so convoluted and it's just so false and ridiculous when you look at it. But not everybody sees it that way, because people are trusting, in some ways naive. Yeah.
I mean, the Facebook followers is not exclusive to Facebook. Facebook is one of the worst. You do see a lot of companies who do sort of claim to have 10, 20,000 followers or whatever it might be. But yes, if you look at those followers, they have absolutely zero relevance to the business or the location or whatever it might be. And I've seen this with media companies in Spain, English language media companies in Spain, who masquerade under this, we've got 20,000 followers, therefore we're the biggest and the best. Yeah. But it is just, it's what we refer to as vanity metrics almost. Yeah. It is meaningless. It doesn't
I would call it bullshit, Mark.
Well, I prefer technical terms. But
you stick to the technical terms. I'll call it as we see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. But it is, the problem is, for the vast majority of us as humans, we want to be trusting. Yes. Because humans are a communal species, and we want to live in a communal species space, and therefore we have to trust each other. But the problem is, these days we can't. And
it's quite sad, actually, isn't it? It's gone from that you want to trust somebody, and you're looking at people, and I was looking at somebody the other day, and because of what had been happening with what had bobbed up with these fraudulent carers, if you like, these rogues that had bobbed up, and then you look at somebody and you think, how long have you known that person, and you see yourself kind of questioning a little bit because you're dubious. Yeah. And that's sad, I think. That is sad.
It's extremely sad, and it's very disappointing, and I do personally become a little bit disillusioned with the world at times. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if I had set up this care company that I was talking about when we started this conversation, and if I was legitimate, and if I was genuinely doing this for the right reasons, I would welcome somebody saying, hey, listen, Mark, can you just give me some kind of credible reference? Can you give me somebody I can speak to? Can you just point me in the right direction? I would welcome people asking me questions to prove my value and to prove what I'm saying.
Well, we're a bit like that with the funeral planning business, White Dove's funeral planning. Without it sounding like, you're talking a load of hot air, it's hard sometimes to say the amount that you actually do for families that's not chargeable, because they're in a situation that need help, they need guidance, and we've never really asked at that point, so could you just put a review on Google? Right, they just lost a mum or the dad. It feels a bit callous. And so we're a bit rubbish, actually, at kind of finding that. But what we do find is that softly, the word gets out of, because of how we operate. Yeah. Thank you, God, for that, because that is exactly what it is. It's how we operate. But we don't actively go out and say, oh, by the way, can you just put a review on Google? How did we handle that? Because we've had reviews from the funerals, because you have developed the White Doves piece of music that is amazing. And, you can see at that funeral how people have been moved by the whole ceremony, if you like, unique, because it is unique, but it's a bit hard to say. And by the way, after that funeral, could you just put a review on Google, the funeral? I just can't bring myself to actually do it. And maybe that's what it is. We're not hard-faced enough. But I think, it's a fine line, isn't it?
It is absolutely fine. I mean, Google reviews, out of all reviews, are the most powerful review system you can get online, because Google rewards honest, genuine reviews. But from your business point of view, it would be crash at the very least for you to go, oh, can you put a review? And you go, oh, great service, loved it, I'm coming back next time. Why don't you have a loyalty card? It would be absolutely ludicrous.
Well, we've dealt with something just recently where a poor person was found dead, basically, in a hotel. So we have got, talk about go beyond. We've gone and collected the suitcase right there and fought hell and high water to get the personal belongings for the family who are in England, who just could not get over. And nobody would do that. They'd just be left high and dry because they couldn't navigate the Spanish kind of system, which clearly is in Spanish as well. And things like that, but they might eventually put something on if we ask. But it is a very, very delicate thing. We're just glad that we've been able to help. And what we find is that word of mouth is actually coming round, that people are getting to know us because of what we've delivered and how we operate. And we've never really advertised actually the funeral planning side and we certainly haven't had it on any social media. Andy, the tech guy, keeps saying, you need to put this out there, Moira, but we will. But coming back to where we started on the scams and whatever. So really, because we could talk about this, forever, because there are so many factions and so many avenues of it. But I think the key thing is to look out for red flags. What are the red flags? As you said, the shot call, Mark, jump out of it. It's hard when somebody's done that. But if you're listening to this podcast and you've heard that, then just that awareness that it might not be genuine is something, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We can get that message out. And I think that would be good. Companies who bob up, who suddenly put on like a whole new coat and are suddenly these, specialists and God knows what, but have no digital footprint whatsoever for the founders. Red flag, basically. A massive red flag. All the scams in terms of carers, very, very hard. All we'd say is find a company who are legitimate. Do your due diligence, as you said, Mark, on finding out how do they operate? Do they train their staff? Are the staff employed? How are they operating as a business? Are they operating as a legitimate business with, qualified trainers, carers who are trained? So, if not, I know it might seem cheaper to pay somebody 10 quid an hour, cash in hand, but.
And due diligence is something which is very complicated in some ways. So, in the UK, for example, you can check a company on Companies House. Here in Spain, there's a mercantile registers that people can check. You can search government records for things like NIE numbers, SIF numbers, and so on. So you can find records. But the chances are nobody would know how to do it.
It's too complicated to navigate in Spain.
But at the end of the day, you've still got a voice, you've still got a mouth, you've still got ears. Ask around. If there's, whether it's a digital footprint, as you say, if there's no digital footprint, that's a red flag. If there's no footprint, if nobody's ever heard of this company or it's not even aware of them, then that alone is something to be wary of. Ask around, ask your friends, ask your community groups. You can use social media to an extent and say, oh, I'm looking for a X. Has anybody got recommendations? But that in itself has to be done cautiously.
I know it's hard, isn't it? Because, there are a lot of people who are out there working who are not legal and, it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's just trying to get a bit of logic into it. But be aware that if there are people who are scamming people out of, substantial amounts of money, you've got to then say, do I want to be their next victim?
Absolutely. Check everything as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Sad though it is, trust nobody.
I know I think it is so sad, but we're at where we're at. Protect yourself. I think of the old Colgate ring of confidence.
Absolutely.
With that little metal, glowing ring around you, and keep a bit of distance.
But I'm pretty sure that we will talk more about fraud as well in the future, because there is so much we could
oh my goodness,
about,
yes, yeah. And of course, at the Expat Centre here in Casada, but some people might be listening from much further afield, we will run regular talks on fraud and how to protect yourself. So by all means, reach out to us. We'd love to help, and please stay safe. And thank you, Mark.
I'm just going to butt in, because maybe we should do some online as well, online talks in the future.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thought about that. Could be quite
that
useful.
could work. I think that would work pretty well, because it's reaching the audience. Not everybody can get to one particular location, and this is so, so important.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to throw in an email address again, because podcasts@madblackcat.com, which I will be honest, comes to me. I'm the one who filters emails at that email address, so I will forward them to Moira. But if you have got anything particular you want to say or ask, then get in touch. Podcasts@madblackcat.com. And then we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.